Hello and welcome to Sneaky Farm, an ultra budget cEDH deck tech for Yuriko the Tiger's Shadow. This list comes in at less than $100 but still packs a hugely competitive punch, utilising many cEDH staples without breaking the bank. This deck was designed by Draw Island Gore from the cEDH Budget Brews Discord server, which I would highly recommend anyone checking out if they'd like to explore the world of budget and ultra budget cEDH. Links in the description box below. This is a style of deck often referred to as turbo nose, meaning it wants to cast ad nauseum or peer into the abyss as quickly as possible, spending most of its life total to get a massive grip of cards and win the game from there. Our actual win condition is the ever faithful combo of Demonic Consultation to exile our entire deck, plus the enters the battlefield ability of Thassa's Oracle to win the game. But to put the turbo in our turbo nose deck, we need to draw cards very quickly, and that's where our commander comes in. Yuriko's Commander Ninjutsu ability means that as long as we have an unblocked attacker, we can cast our commander for only 2 mana and guarantee ourselves at least 1 card draw, with even more if we have some other ninjas attacking as well. To support this strategy, the deck runs 30 creatures, 18 of which cost either 1 or 0 mana, to all but ensure that we can drop a cheap attacker on turn 1 and Ninjutsu in Yuriko on turn 2. While it is highly unlikely that every one of our opponents has a blocker on board by then, even if they do, most of our creatures have some form of combat evasion, whether it be flying or being straight up unblockable. And while Yuriko will almost always draw 1 card by herself, thanks to the addition of some choice ninjas, including 3 1-cost changelings, it's highly likely that we'll be able to draw 2 or more cards on each of our combat steps before we even start to consider our other players. An ideal opener could look something like a turn 1 Ornithopter and Changeling Outcast, turn 2 bounce the Ornithopter to Ninjutsu in Yuriko, drawing 2 cards, 1 from herself and 1 from the Changeling Outcast, then recast the Ornithopter and on turn 3 bounce it back to hand again to Ninjutsu in Ingenious Infiltrator and draw 6 cards. Of course, this is a little bit magical Christmas land, but we didn't put those cards in our deck to not use them. While a lot of our deck slots are taken up by creatures to create our Yuriko value engine, we still have plenty of room for cards that will advance or protect our game plan. Firstly, our high creature count makes protecting Planeswalkers quite easy, so cEDH All-Stars Narset, Partner of Veils and Ashiok Dreamrender can create some serious stacks-like problems for our opponents. We even have a couple of ways to take unique advantage of these already fantastic Planeswalkers, such as Windfall with Narset or Scheming Symmetry with Ashiok. Secondly, our colour combination gives us access to some of the most potent cheap spells in the format. Black gives us access to 4 great rituals in Dark Ritual, Cabal Ritual, Culling the Weak and Reign of Filth, while blue is going to give us incredibly powerful controlling tools in Counterspell and the like, as well as one of the best ever solo card draw engines in Mystic Remora. Once we have over half our deck in our hands, it should be pretty trivial to cast and protect our win condition. Of course, on a budget, our mana base is going to take a hit, but in a 2-colour deck, and especially one designed to draw so many cards, we can rest quite comfortably on basics, of which we'll run 27 out of our 34 lands. 5 of the remaining 7 slots we'll use for some very cheap dual lands, and the other 2 for the incredibly powerful utility of Mystic Sanctuary, as well as Halimar Depths, which honestly I'm not quite so keen on, especially without many shuffle effects in the deck, but I ought to give it a bit more of a chance before I tell you to take it out. I don't want to discuss every card in this list because that's part of the fun of playing and exploring a deck, but I think it is worth highlighting some particularly interesting cards and interactions in here. Firstly, let's talk a little bit about Yuriko's ability. You might not be thrilled about the prospect of hitting the table for only 1 or 2 points of life when you reveal cards like Ginger Brute and Augury Owl from Yuriko's ability, and honestly, you shouldn't be. The average CMC of a card in this deck is 1.1, which is a purposeful decision to allow ad nauseum to draw as many cards as possible. However, you should keep in mind 2 things. The first is that those little bits of life loss can add up, especially if you're triggering Yuriko 2, 3 or even more times per turn. Add on other bits of damage from the attacks themselves, other players, and your opponents using their own life as a resource, and a grindy win, or at least a strategic elimination of certain players, can be very possible with this deck. There's even a few interesting maneuvers you can make, like tutoring Peer into the Abyss on top of your deck with Scheming Symmetry before combat to hit everyone for 7 off Yuriko's trigger, and you get one of the best cards in your deck. The second thing to remember is that even without the life loss part of the ability, drawing cards every combat is just incredibly good. Orcame Adversary and Mindblade Render are cEDH All-Stars, and we have that as our commander, plus we can trigger it multiple times per turn. That's very strong in and of itself without any bonuses. Coming back to Scheming Symmetry, it's one of the most interesting cards in the deck. I've already talked about its great interaction with Ashiok, effectively turning it into a vampiric tutor, but there's some other interesting things we can do with it as well, like casting it and following it up with a portent to see what they tutored and potentially shuffle it away, or casting the Scheming Symmetry, following it up with a draw spell, and then casting a Winds of Rebuke to bounce a problematic permanent and mess up the other player's tutor. This deck is powerful as is, but a budgetless version would obviously be even better. As you'll find with many cEDH decks, the expensive upgrades to this list are very versatile, like more expensive tutors and fast mana. So if you decide that you want to spend more money on the deck, you'll find you can use those cards in a great many decks and you won't be confined to just playing Yuriko forevermore. As a result, Yuriko is not only a great introduction to the world of budget cEDH, but can also serve as a guiding path towards budgetless cEDH. In the description box you'll find a budgetless deck list from which you can find a lot of improvements for this deck list at a wide range of budgets. But I'll talk more about improving budget cEDH decks in a future video, so I'm not going to get into that right now. Alternatively, and I feel that this is worth mentioning in any video about Budget Commander, proxying the list is also a very viable option. In cEDH in particular, players are usually more interested in beating a player and their deck than beating the size of their wallet, and you'll find many players, especially those online, are very welcoming to players wishing to proxy. And that's it for this deck tech. I really hope that you enjoyed watching, and I hope that you consider putting this deck together and taking it out for a spin. If you're interested in seeing more ultra budget cEDH deck techs, I'd recommend leaving me a comment telling me as much so that I know to do more, and then subscribing so that you can see them as they come out. I'd also recommend that you check out the cEDH Budget Brews Club website and Discord server, both linked in the description box below, where there is a community full of people discussing, building and playing budget cEDH decks. If you do happen to join on account of this video, please do let me know about that. I'd love to know that I've successfully contributed to such a fantastic community. Lastly, but definitely not leastly, let me give huge thanks to Draw Island Go for both making this list and providing a short primer on it, without which making this video would have been much more difficult. And also, thank you for allowing me to use your content in this video. Big thanks and much love to you. But that is all from me on this one. Thank you very much for watching and go well.